to A Well-Designed Business. My name is LuAnn, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company Window Works from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. It's Power Talk Friday, and today's special guest is George Oliphant. George is the popular Emmy Award-winning host of NBC's George to the Rescue, a weekly national home improvement show. For 12 seasons, George and his team of contractors and interior designers have rescued deserving homeowners and community centers. George started out his career as a touring children's theater actor. He quickly transitioned to become the host of Nickelodeon's Nick Gas. From then on, he worked as a VJ for various MTV shows. After working as a VJ, he landed jobs for NBC as a host, one of them being Open House to the Rescue, which then turned to George to the Rescue. The show began in New York and is now a part of all NBC stations across the map. George to the Rescue recently won a second consecutive National Daytime Emmy for Outstanding Lifestyle Series. You can stream past episodes on YouTube and on Peacock. With 12 seasons in and 138 episodes completed, George has learned a thing or two about what it takes to rally the troops, create good TV, and develop lasting relationships. And Window Works was recently privileged to donate window treatments for an upcoming episode. When asked to lend a hand by our good friend, New Jersey designer Campbell Minister, of course, it was a resounding yes. We'll be turning into George to the Rescue on September 25th, 2021, to watch George make a family very, very happy. And I can't wait to see what Campbell Minister of Decorated Interiors has created. Now, let's meet George and find out how George to the Rescue came about, and also get the inside scoop on how designers, builders, and trade vendors are chosen to be on the show so that they can help transform the homes of the community members who really could use the lift. Hi, George. Thanks so much for joining me on A Well-Designed Business today.
LuAnn, I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm the one who's excited. George, I've been following you for years. I mean, you are literally a treasure of the tri-state area here in the New York, New Jersey tri-state area. The work that you have done through 12 seasons of George to the Rescue, the families whose places and spaces you have transformed, and the interior designers which have had the opportunity to do work with you is amazing. And so for me, I'm like, whoa, I'm on the phone with George to the Rescue.
Flattery will get you everywhere. But no, it's an honor and a pleasure, and I'm excited to talk with you. I was actually talking to a friend of mine who's a designer, and she was like, "Oh, I know LuAnn Nagara," and she was and she knew the podcast, and I realized that every designer I know knows you and knows the podcast. And working in the tri-state area, I'm lucky. Like I worked on Design on a Dime with Housing Works for a number of years, and I go in there and I know like every designer because I've worked with them all, and everyone's like, "Oh, you knew that designer?" I'm like, "I know every one of them because
right.
I've been very blessed to do something in the tri-state area for those people that really need it with the best of the best. I would put the designers in the New York tri-state area against any designers in the world. And I have a very special relationship with them where together we come in and we transform people's homes that really need it. And we do it the only way you know how to do it in New York. We go big and we go beautiful and we go bold, and we give them unbelievable designs in spaces that they couldn't even have ever dreamed would look the way they do. So I'm very proud of that, and I am very aware that a lot of it is from the designers that I work with. The builders too, got to give those guys
Yep.
credit, and
Yep.
women, all the trades. But our designers, as you know, in this part of the country, are something special.
Yeah, no, it's the truth. I mean, look, what you do, the mission and the vision for, the show and what you do is really incredible. And of course, Ellie Morose was on the show a couple of years ago, and I know that Ellie and her husband have done several episodes with you.
Several
And
episodes.
yes,
And
and
Ellie's
that
even
was
done a couple where she was just the designer without Mike.
right.
She's amazing. Love her.
Yes, yes. For me, though, that happened before I met Ellie. And now been given the privilege of being part of the George to the Rescue process, because this summer, you did one with Campbell Minister, who is another designer here that was started out as a podcast listener. I remember being in my office when I was still doing 80% of my time at WindowWorks, and the podcast was a major side hustle. And I walked into WindowWorks, and Kim said to me, there is a designer on the phone, and she listens to the podcast, and she wanted to know if she could talk to you. And this was maybe in the first 7-8 months of the podcast. And that was always oh my God, somebody's listening. Oh my God, somebody out there really listens. And I got on the phone, and Campbell Minister and I had such a great conversation. And she said to me, I'm brand new, and I have to tell you, finding your podcast has been such a joy for me, and just so much, it's helping me, blah blah blah. And to think 5 years later, we are doing major projects with Campbell, and she invited us to do George to the Rescue with you on a project this summer. And to see the change and the growth and the way she is operating her business is incredible. And I'm curious, what was your experience working with Campbell, George?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I was just as you were saying all that, I was just yes, yes, just nodding my head, because that's who Campbell is. I met her here in Montclair a number of years ago. We were kind of on the outside of a similar circle. Her kids are a little younger than mine. And I, became friends on social media, started following her designs on Instagram, and I just saw her growing, just like you were saying. And she just she blossomed. And when this project came in Glen Ridge, she was the first person I thought of. I mean, it's in her vicinity. I knew that she could do it. She's a mom. She would connect with the story. It was for a little girl who has cancer, who's battling cancer, and it was a bedroom for her and her brother. And I have to tell you that Campbell reset the bar. And this isn't against all my other designers are phenomenal, but whatever Campbell did, she came in, she was so hyper organized, and her design, and she knew what she wanted, and she knew how to get it, and she knew how to make it all come together. And but she did it in such a pleasant way. She was so friendly, and
Yes.
everyone just fell in love with her across the board. And I honestly, my producers are how do we get more Campbell? How do we whatever her schedule was right on. She's oh, we're gonna do this on this day, and we did it on that day. And as you know, in construction, design, home improvement, it is very hard to hit your dates. We try as hard as we can. We get as many ducks in a row before we start a rescue. And inevitably, I always think, I'm okay, this is a soft reveal date. We're going to reveal on May 25th, but it may not reveal until, June 6th, because we might
Right.
need an extra week because of punch list, because this didn't come, that didn't come, this needed to be moved, what have you, all those things. And I built my reputation with George Rescue is I don't ever want to be one of those shows where people say it's all smoke and mirrors, it's just TV. He doesn't really care. I care deeply. I care so much. My crew gets mad at me because I point out the littlest things, small scratches or a broken light switch plate. But those things drive me crazy, and so I'm I want it to be punch list free when we reveal. I want to turn the house over and say, this is for you. I'd like to see you in a social setting. I don't want to see you in a work setting. I want you to enjoy your home. You needed this. That's why we came in here to do it. And the last thing you needed to be doing is going back and forth with your designer and your contractor and your trades trying to get things finished. So when I finish a George Rescue, even if it makes us work an extra week and we have to put the family up in a hotel for an extra week or whatever, I know at the end of the day that extra week is worth its weight in gold because of just trying to get things done after you've already moved in. And back to Campbell, She said she was going to be done on the 25th of May. She was done on the 25th of May. And I was shocked. Everyone was shocked. I don't think we've ever hit that in George to the Rescue history of being like done on the day we were supposed to. Maybe like once or twice when we did like live reveals with the Today Show, which is a whole different
Yeah,
basket
stakes
of
are a little
stress.
higher there.
Yeah, that's a whole other world of stress. But I was just, yeah. So I can't say enough good things about Campbell.
Well, and I have to share this with you. It's interesting because, of course, Campbell worked with Kim on the actual doing of it, and then Billy and Carlos did the install. But when Campbell had the opportunity to do the project with you, she called and she asked to speak to me because she understood, like, she's got to get my approval on this. Are we going to do this or not? And she called and, hey, how you doing, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, I have an opportunity to do George to the Rescue. What do you think? I'm like, you can stop talking right there, lady. Yes, I'm going to support you in that. And of course, I knew of you from, being in the area, from watching Ellie's episodes and so forth. So it was a yes for you and that opportunity for Window Works. But she could have said, I'm doing, Billy Bob to the Rescue, and it's in Iowa. Nobody's going to know us. If Campbell needed the support, she was going to get it from us. And that's the point. But the other point is on that first call, she literally said, okay, so let me review the schedule with you. And she said, this is when you can get into Measure. Can I get on Kim's calendar? Can I get her in the calendar? And this is the install date. Can we look at Billy's calendar right now? And the day she asked me if we would do the show with her, we made the appointments for the Measure and for the double. We put a second appointment in for Kim. She was like, maybe we should have a backup appointment just in case it's not ready to Measure, in case something we have to go back, we'll have it in the calendar. And we made the 2 alternate install dates like 6 weeks out. So I'm not surprised that she had that whole project buttoned up.
Oh no, and I mean it just speaks to who she is as a woman who runs a business, but also as a designer. She knows, she gets her ducks in a row. Yeah. Everyone on the George Rescue team is excited for another Campbell Minister project. So
that's awesome.
Just because they know how smoothly it runs, and it's beautiful, and her taste is exquisite. She really gets to she understands. She understood who the boy was, Alex. She understood who Zoe was. She understood the family. She takes that time. She's a very caring woman and an amazing professional.
Yeah, awesome. Love it, love it, love it. So let's backtrack a little bit. So.
Okay. How far back do you want to go?
Well, just to the idea of George to the Rescue. Like, was this an idea that, because, George, here's the thing. We have a lot of designers that are in the audience listening that are seeing the opportunity on HGTV, Magnolia Network, whatever it is, right? We have a lot of conversations on the show with PR professionals that talk about, how you position yourself to be ready to blah, blah, blah. But pitching a television show is a whole nother animal. And did you pitch the show and come up with the idea, or were you already known in the industry? I know you did Open House to the Rescue. So was that like, oh, you were doing that, you were successful, and they said, we have another idea, or how did that happen?
Yeah, so basically a little bit of both. But yes, it did spawn off of Open House. I've been in the business for a while. I used to be an adventure travel host. Made a hard left after I became a family man and started doing human interest television. No, I did, but that wasn't the exact reason. I was transitioning, I had worked with Vail Resorts, and I'd been on MTV, and for those of your designers who are old enough to remember Dan Cortez from MTV, I was kind of like that on a different scale. And then I got an opportunity. I was working with a production company called LXTV, and which ended up being bought by NBC. And at the time, we were doing stuff, a lot of the stuff that you see in the back of cabs, what has now become like First Look or Talk Stoop. We did a lot of interviews. We were kind of showcasing the city. It was like a daily candy coming to life, and all these new restaurants and workouts and clubs and restaurants. We would spotlight them, and it wasn't just me. It was myself, Sarah Gore, Pedro Andrade, and a couple of others. And we ended up Morgan Hertzan is his name, and he was the founder of LXTV, and he came up with this brainchild, born and raised in New York City, of showcasing. This was like early on. This was 2006, 2007. that he's like, New Yorkers want to know what's going on behind the doors in these amazing apartments. How do I share that? And he started Open House. And he got Sarah to be the host, and he asked me if because I was handy. I'd built like I like to think of myself as like the LXTV Harrison Ford, in that I had like built the conference room table. I was a carpenter, and I had moved to New York to be like a set builder, so I was always very handy. And he's like, about like construction, at least enough that you can be like the face of like the takeaway for our show Open House. And I said, okay, I'm not really into home improvement television. Like I like the adventure television stuff. I like, doing stuff like that. But I'll give it a whirl, like anything, and see where it lands. And we did a 12 episode pilot for Open House on NBC. Since Open House is now, and I think it's 15th season. Obviously, they picked it up, and we've continued on. And
Wow.
Sarah is still hosting it and doing a fantastic job. And Sarah is as amazing and friendly and sweet as she seems on TV. So just a shout out to Sarah Gore. She is a close friend of mine, and I've been lucky to have worked with her for all these years. And so I came to my boss at the end of the first 12 episodes, and I was like, I don't mind doing this, but I don't really like the direction of my particular segment, which at that time was called Floor Plan. And it was just kind of like a 101 on, if you want to put in a pool, here's a couple of ideas. You can go with a gunite, you can go with a liner. And it wasn't very sexy or exciting, or I don't know. We were kind of throwing things at the wall. I mean, this was the beginning of a show. What is an interesting segment in here? Obviously, there's the segment where we have, potential homeowner or buyers looking at different apartments for sale. We have the designer element where people are showing off the designs they've done in homes. And now we have this whole, if you're going to do it at your house, here's what you can do. The show Open House has obviously changed very much from that. Now it really only showcases the homes and the designers, which makes most sense. And George Rescue became its own entity. But before it did, I said, why don't we do something for homeowners? Why don't we just check something off the honey-do list? And like, I was a new homeowner at that point. I was a new father at that point. I had a long honey-do list. And I said, this is good for me. I can learn how to do all these things. And so we literally went from home to home, which was the last 5 minutes of Open House, doing what we called Open House to Rescue, surprising families and just kind of checking something off their honey-do list, but also in the Open House vein, doing something a little more than just that. Like, we would do like all window treatments for like a room, or we would go in and do different types of moldings and paintings and sometimes wallpaper, and we'd feng shui a space. And it was literally anything and everything that somebody could think that they would want to do or need to do in their house. And we would tackle these small projects, 2 to 3 days max, and all design driven. And I worked with so many different designers through doing that. It's crazy. And then we ended up coming across this guy, and it snowballed from small projects like putting hi-hats in a room to full bathrooms, laundry rooms, bedrooms, living rooms, and then of course, the piece de resistance, the kitchen. We did a kitchen came, and it was such a big undertaking and such a big cost endeavor that we're like, there's no way we can do this and do it justice and give all the people who are donating and helping us and getting this done enough time in a 5-minute segment. So we went to our bosses at myself and this guy, Andy Sherbo. Andy Sherbo is still the executive producer of George Rescue. He and I started together, and I'm proud to say we still work together. We're still friends. He's the nicest guy on earth. And he and I went to our bosses who at LX, and which had now been bought by NBC, and said we need to do like a Open House Rescue special half-hour episode. And they were a little, worried. I mean, Open House was at that time 3 years old, and they're like, we don't want to cannibalize Open House, and we don't want to give people the wrong idea that Open House is turning into just this. But they gave us the opportunity in the summer of 2009. And it was this guy named Al Kaplan, and it was his kitchen. And I remember he had Kermit the Frog green cabinets, and
Which are so
he
popular now.
they're now so popular, but thankfully he recycled them and put them in his garage. And actually, at a later date, we had a reveal, and he's like, "Look what I did, George," which is part of the magic of George Rescue is that I am friends with so many of the families that we have rescued, with so many of the contractors, the designers, the vendors. It's just like it's an amazing family that has grown over 12 plus years of doing this show. But anyway, so Al was this guy who's his brother or sister and brother-in-law passed away in not far apart, or a couple of months, leaving behind a 12 and a 10-year-old child, a 12-year-old son and a 10-year-old daughter. And Al became their guardian, and they lived with Uncle Al. And Uncle Al's like, I'm gonna sell. He's like, I want you guys to move in with me. And they said, Uncle Al, we want you to move into our house where we lived with our mom and dad.
Mm.
And he said, fine, I'm gonna do it. Sold his house, moved in there, had some money. He's like, what would you guys want to do to the house? That maybe your parents always want to do but never did. And he's like, the kitchen. That mom always wanted to do the kitchen. He's like, okay, we're gonna do the kitchen. As luck would have it, there was a storm. A tree fell through their roof. They didn't have the good enough. Whatever their insurance was not enough to cover the bill.
Mm.
All the money that was supposed to go towards the kitchen went towards fixing the roof and the whatever. And now here they were without this kitchen, and these kids were orphaned. And Uncle Al had come in, and somebody got that story to us, and we rallied the troops. And this is where I met Steve Fanuca, who has become a dear friend of mine. He's a big time contractor in the city. He's done amazing jobs for quite a laundry list of high end clients. And he's like, but he wanted to do something for George the Rescue. He'd heard of the show, and we got in touch, and he came out and he saw it, and he led the charge with me, and we did this kitchen, and it came out spectacularly, and as you would expect. Although, unlike now, where George the Rescue takes, I don't know, 5 weeks, 7 weeks max to do a project, we did that in real time, like 6 months. So we were doing other projects simultaneously, and the audience's response was fantastic. They wanted more. NBC was getting requests to do more George the Rescue or Open House the Rescues. They liked it, so we did, of course, another pilot right on the heels of that one. We did a third pilot episode for a EMS first responder volunteer firehouse. We did their rec room, and after that happened over the course of the winter and spring of 2010. And in July of 2010, we were greenlit for George the Rescue for 6 episodes, and we haven't looked back. We've
That's
continued
amazing.
to help families and communities in need, and that's what I always say about George Rescues. Everybody wants something. I mean, heck, there's you work in the industry, I work in the industry. There's things in my own house. I'm like, oh, I got to do this. I need to do this. I want to do this. I got to call somebody to do this. But those are all things I really want, and these are families who really need it. Like
Mm.
they wouldn't even know, where to start, and their plates are full with whether it's medical bills or different obstacles or health issues, whatever it may be. We want to take the home improvement element off their plate. And that's what George the Rescue's really always been about, is just kind of make people's lives easier. And sometimes it's people who are dealing with some sort of, adversity, like I said, whether it's a death in the family, a sick kid, a paralysis, a laundry list of different ailments, or sometimes it's just people who are regular people, but they are first they're obviously first responders, teachers, military personnel, firefighters, police officers, anyone who also puts their life. Their livelihood is about helping others. We want to do what we can to help them, and people have triplets when they are expecting to have one kid, and that their whole life gets
Yes.
like, I don't even know where this kid's going to sleep. How are we going to do this? So, what I call the feel good George Rescues. I feel all George Rescues feel good, but there are definitely some families who I know, and they love me and I love them, who would say I would rather never have had George to Rescue come into my home
Yeah.
and have to not deal with whatever led
Right.
us there. So
Right. Yeah.
but yeah, it's been a wild road. So yeah, I guess that's a long answer, and I guess the short of it is, I started with open house, and we were able to kind of carve out a niche of where helping people. Um, and that's what I wanted to do. I never wanted it to be just nuts and bolts, home improvement, informational. I wanted it to be a human interest story. I went to school at the University of Colorado as a filmmaker, documentary filmmaker. So I love the documentary element of telling the story of these people, their inspirational elements, their heartbreak, the just who they are and why coming and helping them out is necessary. And I also love that with George Rescue, we can actually do something. I feel like, and this is having worked in, like, watched news my whole life. I feel like news always just talks about this happened, but nobody ever talks about, well, what are we going to do now that this happened? And I feel like, you hear about, oh, this person was in an accident. Okay. What are we going to do to help them? And I wanted to be part of the helping. And so I always, I just find it's like you can show something, you can entertain people, and you can leave people better than you found them.
Mm. It's a great journey, and I love the way it happened. That here you are part of open house, and then it's the open house rescue, and then you recognize, because you're right. If you're going to start to do more significant, more details in the projects, how can you give all of those supporters and those vendors and trades a shout out if we've got 5 minutes and we want to see the actual space, right? So, I love what I'm hearing in there is there's a lot in your background. We talk about it on the show, George, about being prepared to be lucky. So there's a lot in your background. Here you had done set design. You had gone to school and did documentary filmmaking. You had done some TV work, and, you've done some construction, and all of it comes together. And the guy looks at you and says, do you want to do this? And you're like, I'll try it. Let me try it. Then you have to be prepared to pivot and to be open-minded. And so all of that is evidenced in that journey. And before we go, I just want to give a shout out to Steve Fanuca. Any of us here in the New York, New Jersey area know exactly what you mentioned, that he is, A-list guy in the area as far as reputation, quality, and the things that he does. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to Steve.
Oh,
now,
he's the best.
yes,
Love
right?
him.
And the other shout out that I want to do is you mentioned the firefighters and the first responders and the teachers and so forth. I happened to catch the episode that you did when you redid this space for the Point Pleasant volunteer fire facility, the firehouse there. And, it's just amazing to see, what the designer team on the job did, but the reactions of the firefighters that, when you think about it, at first, I wasn't catching it at first. And then at one point in the show, somebody said something else again about how they were volunteers. And I was like, whoa, because the show opens with one of the firefighters saying that they respond to about 340 to 355 or 60 fires a year. Now, I'm from New Jersey, so I'm thinking Point Pleasant has almost one a day. That's crazy because it's such a sleepy, tiny little town.
Yeah.
But I'm like going on that thinking blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden it came out, and it was, like I said, repeated that they were volunteer. And these are people that have lives, wives, children, husbands, full-time jobs. And meanwhile, they come together to respond to almost a fire a day on a volunteer basis. And then the whole story just took even more meaning for me. And I just was like looking at it and to see the joy. And I love, because for me, I'm always getting at the why, like what is the little hook thing in here? And toward about 3/4 into the show, one of the more senior firemen said, a big part of being able to successfully, I'm paraphrasing, successfully respond to fires when you are a volunteer fire company is having your firefighter team spend time in the firehouse, like not having to call them from their own home. And he said, when we have a place like this now that they want to hang out in. And I just was like, oh, see, this is a whole different level of helping the community, because you, George, just probably impacted somebody maybe surviving a heart attack or their home not being completely on flames. Because if those firefighters are happy and they're in that firehouse and they're hanging out there, then when that call comes in, to that guy's point, they're on the truck. They're not gathering them from 16 points. And if it's, God forbid, it's in the summer, the traffic to get to something, because Point Pleasant is a shore town. And you see, now it went for me, this fun reveal, this fun process, getting to know nice firefighters, men and women. But then it was like, oh, and this probably somebody's life got saved because of this. That's remarkable, George.
Well, I thank you. I think about it sometimes, but sometimes it gets lost, and you just put it so articulately. It isn't lost on me, the impact that George Rescue has in the families that we touch, and especially when we do things on the community level, where we've done things for the Boys and Girls Club in Newark, we've done YMCA's, we've done first responders, volunteer first responders houses, we've done hospitals. It's when you're with these people, and it's when you're especially with the volunteers, and you see that exactly what you said, is that these are people who are coming on their own time, leaving their families to do something for the community as a whole, and by making sure that the place that they congregate is somewhere where they want to be, it is going to save people's lives, because they're going to be there. So when that bell rings, they can go. It's not, oh, the bell rings, let me finish dinner, let me get my pants on, I got to get down to the firehouse, I got to get dressed, I got to go. Right. And it makes a huge difference. And they said that, and you picked that up, and that means a lot to me. And while we're shouting out, Tracy Pierce was the designer on that. She also did she's an amazing designer down in the Point Pleasant, Toms River area. I can't say enough great things for her. She's done 3 George Sir Rescues. We're looking at doing a 4th one this fall with her. And she just wears her heart on her sleeve. She cares so much about her community and about people, and always goes above and beyond. I know that sometimes she's gone a little big on rescues and coming right out of her own pocket, never hit up which we sometimes insist, we're NBC, we'll reimburse you. We don't have all the money in the world, but sometimes you give the budget, and designers bust it, and when it's a client, sometimes you come back and you're like, I need a little bit more money. But when you're doing a George Rescue, I know that a lot of times they feel like, hey, this is for somebody else. I can only do what I can do, and I don't care. I'm putting my own money into this, and Tracy has done that a number of times. So
wow, that's amazing. And she what a fantastic job all of you did. I mean, all of the projects, but like I said, that little aha moment as I was listening went from, oh, this is nice, to whoa, this is significant. So awesome. I just had to take a second on that. But this leads into your praise of Tracy, and of course our previous praise on Ellie and Campbell.
And I could go on about every literally designer
right?
On the show, and I would, but I feel like I'd miss somebody, and they call me.
Of course.
You didn't talk about me.
I know. People say to me when I go to live events, oh, tell us your favorite podcast episode. I'm like, you're out of your mind right now.
Yeah, no, I get the same thing. People are like, what's your favorite episode?
Exactly.
I'm like, I can't have a favorite. They're like kids to me. These are families that I've affected in a deep way. I'm like, there are some that I'm a little bit more, not proud. We had one specifically. It was a boy who was a quadriplegic. He was in a car accident. It was horrible. And our contractor's a guy named Paul Lopa. He's out of Staten Island. And he, his dad died the day after demo. Had a heart attack and passed away. And I was like, oh, okay. And I'm a licensed contractor in New Jersey. And I was like, well, we started the project. I'm going to have to put this on my license. I'll find guys, whatever. We'll figure it out. And the next day, Paul was there, and he's like, this is where my dad would want me to be.
Oh, whoa.
And we ended up doing this amazing project, and so many dominoes fell, and we ended up doing such a bigger project. We were going there to do a bedroom and a bathroom. We ended up doing a kitchen and a new driveway. And it's one of those great things about George Rescue. Sometimes it spirals out of control in a great way, especially when people are being generous. And it's a little bit harder in COVID, but I know it'll happen again. And it's just people like to help other people, and if they can, they will. And that's one thing I've really learned with George Rescue.
Well, so this leads me to the couple of things that I wanted to make sure we covered. Number one is, I know that designers listening are thinking, how do I get involved? I mean, it sounds like, hey, you're friends, Campbell because your kids are the same age, but is there a process where a designer can put themselves up for nomination to be part of it? And I'm assuming that we are strictly New York, New Jersey, tri-state area. I know you've done projects in Long Island, you've done, around there, but you're not going to Georgia to do a project, right?
So yes and no. We have done projects actually all over the country because We've done projects where we've collaborated with the Today Show. So we did a project down in North Carolina, and we worked with the Raleigh Wake County Home Builders Association. So we had a slew of different contractors. Our designer was a woman named Louise Davis down there. We've done projects out in Arizona that we did with the Meredith Vieira Show. We've done projects in the Chicago area and in the Dallas area, and we did one in Los Angeles. A guy named Christopher Grubb. He's quite a designer.
Oh my
He's been
goodness,
doing
I
pretty well for
love
himself.
Christopher. I
I
didn't
love
realize he did
Christopher.
your show.
Yeah, he did one episode, our one in
Oh,
Compton. He is one of my favorite people on earth.
yeah.
I see him only usually in Vegas
Yeah,
at
me
the.
too.
Yeah, well, you and I are probably there together. Well, next time we'll have to see him together.
Exactly. He's
But
been on
yeah,
my show. He's a great guy.
no, he is the greatest. So again, to your point, the designers I work with are all people that everyone knows because they have the clientele that allows them that they say, listen, I can step away from this. Not that I can't because their clientele are high maintenance, but I want to be able to do something good.
So then that is the burning question, right? Like designers are listening and they're thinking, oh, so it isn't just New York, New Jersey. How do I is there a process to submit yourself to be on George to the Rescue, to be a designer partner of yours? Or is it literally referrals? This guy, somebody knows somebody and then you get recommended?
Okay, so yes, I want to say yes, there is a place where you can submit, but I also know that our team is very small and that the inbox gets very full, and your message, Nate, may never get read.
Sounds like my inbox.
Right. So, a lot of who if you work with a contractor or designer or a vendor who's been on George Rescue, that's going to give you a much quicker pipeline right to our producers, who are the ones who are doing. I can tell you that I've done, like I said, I do Housing Works. I've done so many different events with designers, show houses, showcases, you name it. And people are always like, I really want to do your show. And I'm like, I really would love to have you. I'm sure you'd be amazing. But I don't know our own schedule. And it's like, really, when I see, like, okay, we're going to be in this part of Jersey, who do I know? And and so I'll usually like, when I'm talking with my producers, I'll be like, oh, okay, we're gonna be in this part of Jersey. Let's call Ellie, or
Mm-hmm.
let's call Jules Duffy, or let's call Marlena Teich, or let's call whoever, depending on where we are in like Long Island, and then they're all very busy, and so they'll be like, George, I love it, but I can't do it, or it's not the right time, or it's too far away, or sometimes they say yes and then they do it, and that makes everyone's life easier because they know the show, I know them, we all have a good time doing something good for somebody else. When we get into situations where we're like, okay, we need new blood, for instance, like this one coming up, when we did this, I was like, oh, I know just the designer, and I called up Campbell, and it worked out perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And every designer on George Rescue, whether they've been on 10 times or 2 times, there was a time when they were, it was their first time and we didn't know who they were. So it's not like, oh, if it's an old boys club and if you haven't already been on, you're never going to get on, because we had new designers, 3 or 4 or 5 every year. We may, bring somebody back to do another one, because the people what they're going to bring, that they know the show, they know the budget, they want to be part of it. My friend Eamon Roche, I don't even know if he's still in the construction industry. He did episode 1 of George to Rescue, and he said, doing this show is the best time I've had doing my job, because he got to come in and do his job, but he did it for a very appreciative client. And I think we can all appreciate, not all clients are appreciative. So with George Rescue, they're more than appreciative. And for the designers, and this is why I think designers love the show, besides the fact that they get to give back, is they get to they're not getting, they get a little input, obviously, from the client, the people that we're rescuing. But for the most, it's a blank canvas. They get to really show what it's almost like a show house, but you're leaving it for this family. So you have to take into account who they are, what they need, why they need it. But then from there, it's like, okay, I can play. I can put wallpaper here. I can do shelves. I can do built-ins. I can do trim. I can do paneling. I can take some risks. Nobody took more risks than Tyler Whistler, who was on a number of George Rescues. But
another nice guy.
Oh, one of the best. I mean, I can't. I'm lucky. I have such great friends in this industry. True, friends that are as close as family. So I'm very blessed. And but we are always looking for new designers and contractors. But I do have to say that easiest way is nepotism. Finding somebody who has worked with us. Obviously, inundate my DMs. I do get to them eventually on Instagram, which is just George Oliphant. You can also hit all of the George to the Rescue social. That is read by our social media manager. I don't know how much of that is pushed off to our producers. I'm sure some stuff is. But as my dad always said, and I know he stole it from somewhere because he's not the only one. The squeaking wheel gets the grease. Really, the more I'm sure there's some designers who are listening right now who have tried all these things, and I probably even responded to, and I have forwarded your information on to our my producers. It's just trying to find the right job for you. Like pairing you up with the right job, with the right contractor in the right area. Like if, for instance, right now, all the jobs I'm doing are in Long Island. So even though I know a lot of Jersey designers, none of them are driving out to Long Island to do a project as much as they like being part of George Rescue.
Mm-hmm.
So we always try to do it local because that allows for your supply chains. All designers that they work, that's who they know, that's who they can call, that's who can help us, and that's kind of the secret to our sauce is working with people who we're not asking them to ask people that they don't know to do things for them.
Right. It's like I mentioned with Campbell. It's like she is somebody that we know for 5.5 years. We do her work. She needs help. We're going. You know what I mean? It's like you want to tap into the vendor and trade base that is appreciative to that designer, right? Because we're doing it like we do a show house. We're donating our services and everything just like you guys are. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we really learned that giving shout outs back to Steve Panuka. He was the one who was like, trust me. He's like, the money I give to my framers, my painters, whatever, if they, if I need them to paint for a day for a family that needs this, they know that I'm going to
do it.
I'm going to give them some more business.
Yes.
And that's, what we learned. And, same with Ellie. Ellie does a lot of business. If she's like, listen, this is for a one-off for a family that needs this, and I want to be a part of it, and will you help me? Most companies are going to be like, yeah, Ellie, of course, or Campbell or any one of these people, because they're like, I know not only are you doing something good for somebody else, but you're going to showcase us in a good light. And obviously, you're going to be continuing to use us on other projects going forward.
Yep. So basically, what the real answer to the question is, it comes down to relationships. It's you can say it in the spin of it's who you know, but you could also say it in the spin of who have you taken the time to know? Who have you taken the time to help along the way? Because being a good member of the community, a lot of the names that you've mentioned, are members of ASID here in New York or New Jersey, or IDS here in New York
I work
or New
with
Jersey.
both of those,
right.
IDS and ASID.
Exactly.
I work with them all the time.
Exactly. And so as you're mentioning these different names, I'm saying, so if I'm a designer that aspires to do anything, to be a part of a show house, to be part of George to the Rescue, it's yes, we can do a cold pitch. You can send a cold pitch in. But if you're already participating in local organizations, whatever they may be, and you're creating friendships for the fact of creating friendships of how you can be of service, now all of a sudden if you're listening to this, you're like, oh, I know these couple. I know Marlena. She's on the show too, by the way. I know Marlena, and she's in Long Island, and I'm in Long Island. Maybe I could call Marlena and ask her to put a good word in for me with George, because I've been to 16,000, IFDA meetings with her or something. You know what I'm saying?
And Marlena has a direct connection to me or
That's
my team.
my point.
If Marlena
That's
recommends somebody, we will most likely use them. That's the kind of clout that, like Marlena. If Ellie was to recommend somebody, we would give them an opportunity, because exactly what you're saying, the relationships we have with them, the relationships they built with us, and not just for us, because I know a lot of your listeners are probably would like, and this we do all over the country, open house. I know the producers at Open House are always mining the other designers that they use. Like, who else do you know? Besides, brokers, they're always looking for designers.
Nice.
And designers love to show what they've done in New York City, and literally we go to, we are all over the world with Open House. They shoot beautiful houses and apartments and properties anywhere and everywhere. So. And again, that is all the designers. Somebody knows somebody, and is like, oh, hey, because there's only 2 producers that do that whole show, and they do a great job.
Yeah, I love it. Well, we've had thousands of conversations on the show that ultimately come down to relationships, whether it's a show about how could I work with more architects, what do I have to do, if it's a show about how can I find more luxury clients. It's like almost always, no matter what the answer is, you can sit there and say, you know what, that's relationship building again. And so it's a great practice. I can see, George, you're so warm and you're so passionate about it. It's not at all surprising to me that the families that you work with, that the designers and the contractors and everybody that you work with, it doesn't surprise me one bit that they become friends of yours, because you come at it with such a positive energy and such an open heart to it. It's very, very contagious. It's no wonder that the show has been so successful. I understand the technical reasons, that it's, providing a great service to families and exposure to designers and contractors. But, the middle of it is I'm sure is the glue, which is you, which makes it that human thing. Very, very good at what you do, George. I admire it. I really do. Amazing. Hats off to you.
Oh, thank you so much. That really means a lot to me. Like I said, flattery will get you everywhere.
Yeah, no,
It really does mean a lot. I take that to heart. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. And before we end, I just want to say, the Campbell Minister episode where Window Works was very privileged to do the window treatments for the Leroy family in Montclair, or Glen Ridge, I mean to say, is airing September 25th of 2021. So I can't wait. I'm so proud to be involved in it with you. And I can't wait to see what Kim and Campbell and Billy and Carlos did for you and your team and for the lovely family, the Leroys. So thank you so much for letting us be a part of it. And thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Oh my gosh, please. This was my first ever podcast, believe it or not. I don't know. Maybe it was evident by how I rambled on and my stories went all over the place, but I've really had a great time just talking with you, LuAnn. I really hope to have you in Window Works on some more projects going forward, whether it's with Ellie or with Campbell or one of the many other designers that you work with or that we work with. And this has been a lot of fun. So
thank you. You just call, we're here. That's for sure. We totally support what you do. Thanks for coming on today, George.
Anytime.
Well, there you have it. It's just another endorsement for building strong relationships and why they're so important, right? You heard George. His relationship with Campbell Minister of Decorated Interiors in Montclair, New Jersey, began with a quick in-person interaction. But then he started following her on Instagram, and he got to know a little bit more about her because she authentically shows up in her Instagram, right? And that's all it took. He became familiar with her and her work. He started to like her. And then when he needed a designer for an upcoming show, an episode in the area, he thought of Campbell first, right? And this is the thing. It starts with a quick hello. It doesn't have to end there. You can be the one to reach out again and introduce introduce yourself again, to follow the person on social and comment on their posts, right? And sometimes maybe it's appropriate to DM them, right? And let's just think about this little triad here. How did WindowWorks get the opportunity to participate in George to the Rescue? Well, I mean, when Campbell had the opportunity, she looked to us, her relationship with her trusted window treatment vendor, because she knew us so well. And then how did George get on my podcast? Well, because Campbell introduced him to me. And then all of a sudden I'm like, hey, we're on your show. Why don't you come on my show? Right? So we just have to be out there and pay attention and do good work and be a nice person and be the one to offer to help out and see how you can be somebody that can help someone in what they're doing. This is Building Relationships 101, right? And I also want to say is pay attention to how you bring yourself to your projects and to those interactions in these relationships, right? It's that reputation building piece that is so, so important. Campbell got a seat at the table because she happened to meet George somewhere, sometime, right? But when she came through for George and she executed the project in a way that super impressed him and his team, well, now she's got that seat earned, right? And now he's going to remember her for future projects. So we get the opportunity, but what do we do with the opportunity is the thing, right? Now, I also want to say that Revelwoods is our show sponsor. And as our sponsor, Revelwoods is also sponsoring our meet and greet at High Point on October 14th, 2021. The RSVP for this show is in the show notes and in the link tree in Instagram under LuAnn Nigara. And Revelwoods, if you haven't heard of it, has also built a reputation. They've built a reputation as a flooring company that designers love to work with. Revelwood empowers you to become flooring experts so you can cut out the middleman, bringing premium hardwood floors directly to your clients and maximizing your project profitability. Go to revelwoods.com to learn more. Now, a couple of things struck me about George. One was his reaction to an opportunity. He did Adventure TV, but when he was asked to do a home show, what did he do? He thought, well, it's not my thing, but let me give it a whirl. He said yes to something he was unsure about and unfamiliar with, but he learned, he worked, and it paid off. He brought his best to it, right? The other thing about George is that he also looks for opportunities. When he saw that the honeydew projects were becoming bigger and bigger projects and that a 5-minute feature spot wasn't going to be enough, well, he pitched the 30-minute segment that allowed him to properly showcase his honeydew projects, right? This morphed into the opportunity to do the pilot and then into these 12 seasons. So do you think he was lucky? Was Campbell lucky? No, I don't think so. I fully believe we have to be prepared to be lucky. George had a construction background, he did some filmmaking work, and he had and has a big heart. Campbell has great design work under her belt. She has developed very precise systems and processes, and she puts herself out there at events, and she took her social media interaction seriously. Prepare to be lucky. Pay attention to the people who come into your life and go out, meet someone new, and build meaningful relationships. All right? Please don't forget to tune in to George to the Rescue, especially on September 25th, 2021, to see the project that we were privileged to be a part of, but on every episode. It's really a fantastic show. And a quick reminder from my window treatment pros who are interested in building some new relationships and building a better window treatment business. We have the Exciting Windows CEO Conference coming up October 5th to 7th, 2021. Come see us in person in New Jersey and take advantage of the full slate of expert speakers we have. Vita Vykovska will be there, my partner in crime from our WTF episodes, Nicole Heimer, Curio Electro, Steve Burston, Dan Anhauser, myself, and the Vincennes. We're all going to be there, all going to be speaking. The event is open to anyone and everyone for the first day and a half. The second day and a half are just for Exciting Windows members. Learn more about becoming a member and to register for the CEO conference at excitingwindows.com/CEO guest. excitingwindows.com/CEO guest. Thank you tons for listening today. Listening to the show is always a good idea if you want to grow your business. But today, I encourage you to do something further. Do one thing to honor a new relationship in your personal or professional life. Send an email, send a handwritten note, make a phone call, do some interaction on some social media with somebody that you've recently met. Invest your time and your talents in other people. Invest in relationships and watch the magic grow and unfold in your life. Thanks for joining me today. Decide to be excellent. Thank you so much for joining me again today. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks, your resource for custom window treatments and awnings. To learn how we can help you on your next interior design project, go to www.windowworks-nj.com. And if you're interested in working with me on your business, either through masterminds or one-on-one coaching, or you want to know how to get my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, or you just want to know what's going on in the podcast land and where I'm going to be. All of that is found at LuAnnNigara.com. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.